Adams State College. Great stories begin here.
Thanks for coming. I'm going to be talking about two voyages that I did with a program called Semester at Sea. And I'll talk first about last summer, and then I'll talk about my sabbatical this past spring, where we went around the world. This program has been running since 1963, and I just met a woman who is an alum who did this a long time ago as a student. And so, well, I'll talk about this. The reason most people out in this part of the country don't know about this program. It's a little bit better known at CU Boulder, which hosted the program for a number of years, and then back east, they seem to draw a lot of students from back east. But the thing that's fascinating about it is they're basically hiring an entire floating college, faculty, staff, support staff, deans, everything, 3 and sometimes 4 times a year, if you can imagine that, putting an entire staff together for 4 different voyages each year. So it's an enormous amount of work, and they're constantly recruiting faculty and staff. So if you enjoy traveling, this is an interesting study abroad program. It's not traditional where you go to one country and stay there and learn the language, because you're traveling and visiting many, many different countries depending on the voyage. And each type has its trade-offs. So this was our itinerary for the summer. We actually caught the ship. The faculty and staff got on the ship in Florida. We went to Halifax, Canada, picked up students. We sailed across the Atlantic about 10 days. We went to Barcelona. Then we went to a port called Civitavecchia, which is for Rome. That's the port for Rome. Then we went to Naples, then around to Dubrovnik, Croatia, Greece, Istanbul, Egypt, Morocco, and then we sailed back across the Atlantic back home. So I'll show you slides from this first. And I think what would work best is if you don't ask questions until we'll take a break after the summer voyage, and then when I'm finished, and then I think it would probably go a little faster. I've got this, I'm going to set this on automatic so I don't talk too much. Here's the ship. It's about 600 feet long, about 1,000 people on board. Here you can see the ship compared to this is the ship we used, a big cruise ship, which dwarfed our ship. This is just some pictures from on board the ship. The students spent a lot of time laying out. This is where we ate lunch, all our meals every day. We sit out on the deck. It's a fantastic place to eat. This is another one of the decks. This is one of the dining halls. Cafeteria-style dining. You eat with students and faculty every day. This was one real benefit. The sunsets and sunrises were just spectacular. This is the bridge and the captain. The ship is completely automated. It's all computerized. And this is the faculty and staff. So you can imagine hiring that many people 4 times a year. We got to have Sandra Day O'Connor on board from Florida to Halifax. I got to share popcorn with her one night while we watched a movie. That was kind of fun. She's a firebrand, boy. This is Barcelona, a street called Las Ramblas, which is very famous for. The port was right at the end of it. This is Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. Started in 1880, and it's still not finished. It's a whimsical Gothic cathedral that is just crazy. He's got crazy stuff just all over the place. Little animals and grape clusters. I took a group of students snorkeling north of Barcelona. Water was very cold, but we saw great stuff. And we went to Rome, the Colosseum. This is the Tivoli Fountain, a famous landmark in Rome from the 1700s. There's stuff all over in Rome. It is, if you've not been, it's a great city to visit. This is the Pantheon, built in 100 AD. Raphael is buried there. This is a great building called Mussolini's typewriter. It looks like a big old typewriter. This is a political rally in one of the squares while we were there. The back streets in Rome were fantastic. We were there for a week and we had a lot of time to wander the back streets. There's ruins everywhere. Wherever they try and build something, they bump into this kind of stuff. It's all over the city. These are just things that you spot while you're out walking around. This was just on a building. This was in a courtyard. This is Apollo in the Vatican. We took a trip. They organize a lot of trips in each port. The Vatican is a mob scene in the summer, but it was still worthwhile to visit. This is the Hall of Maps. I thought of Dr. Beaton and Benson, all these Renaissance maps. This is the square at St. Peter's Cathedral. And that's inside St. Peter's. Then we went to Naples. This is Pompeii with Vesuvius in the background. Pompeii was wiped out in 79 AD from when Vesuvius blew. Here you can see some of the sites. This is all earthquake building. They built this to withstand the earthquakes. These are some of the, this is an old home from the era. Dog that got caught. Still had a collar on it. It was still chained. This is a person who was caught. Quite a place to go visit. This was a small town I took students to. We went for a hike in a national park there. We met the mayor. It was kind of crazy. These were all biology majors who were with me from one of my classes. These are these old ancient chestnut trees. Then we went to the Adriatic. We crossed the Adriatic. Beautiful sea, but very cold. This is Dubrovnik, Croatia, a walled city right on the Adriatic. Built between it's been occupied the 13th through the 16th century. You can see some of the walls. The students here loved it because they were all jumping off the cliffs into the water. I took some students kayaking and snorkeling there. So in each port, we would take students out on these different excursions that related to our classes. This is the city from the wall that surrounds the entire city. This is Athens. We next went to Athens in the Ionian Sea. This again, ruins that they find when they build the subway. This is a Roman, or actually pre-Roman aqueduct. This gold from the museums, 200 BC. It was like a trip back through human history. We started off 400 to 1,000. This is from the Battle of Thermopylae that was shown in that movie 300. This is the Acropolis and the Parthenon. So now we're talking about 400 BC. And the architecture is remarkable for something that old. This was another temple up on top of the Acropolis. And this is the new Acropolis Museum. Again, they tried to build something and they find all these ruins all over the city. There's a lot of graffiti in Athens. This is some kind of dark graffiti, most of it pretty angry. This is the happy graffiti that I saw. But I mean, it is I was astonished how much graffiti there was. This was a place up in the hills called Delphi. Dates from 600 BC. This is where people went to see the Oracle of Delphi, who was, I think, high on something, but they saw that they foretold the future. This is a beautiful monastery that we visited. Byzantine church there. And we had time. I went to a small, one of the Greek islands, Hydra. Very nice. No vehicles except a garbage truck. Everything is transported by donkeys or horses. And then we sailed up the Bosphorus towards Istanbul. This is Gallipoli, where there was a strategic battle in World War I. This is a building called the Hagia Sophia. First built as a church, then converted into a mosque, then converted into a museum to avoid ethnic conflicts. 380 AD, somewhere in there. Here you can see the church part, and depending on how my slide moves here, there's these great big plaques with Arabic on them. This is the Blue Mosque, just a stone's throw from the Hagia Sophia, and this is a place called Topkapi Palace from the 1400s. Great markets. They have these fantastic markets in Istanbul. You can buy just about everything and anything there. This is a spice market. All these spices and foods that you could buy. Turkish carpets, of course. And this is this great bridge. They had all these restaurants down here. You could fish off the top. The ship was on the other side. This is the University of Istanbul, established in 1453. And these are a bunch of Turkish dads and moms with their daughters going to check out the college to see if they want to send their daughters there. This is the Hagia Sophia in the evening and as we left Istanbul. Coming into these cities by the sea was really remarkable. Then we went to Egypt, to the pyramids, the oldest and most intact of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This is Cairo with the Nile. Very polluted. And this was an interesting stop. This woman was our guide. We had local guides for all of these trips. I led this trip. She was our local guide, and we were in a mosque in Cairo, and this was the most engaged I ever saw the students. They were very interested in finding out what it was like to be a woman in a Muslim country. And our guide, of course, was used to dealing with, foreign tourists, and so she was quite open about it. And I think she talked with them for at least a half an hour. And I mean, they just all kind of huddled around her, and she just fielded all these questions that they threw at them. And that to me is the real beauty of these voyages, is just to go and see all of these different countries and just, again, this whole course of human history. So in Greece, we were 2 to 400 BC, and here in Egypt, we're going to go to 2000 BC. This was a wedding we ended up at. Yeah, it's just one of those things. This is the oldest pyramid, about 2600 BC. This is an unexcavated pyramid. And here you can see, oh, shoot, that thing's going to cover it up. The dates are just so amazing because they're, 2360 BC. Some of the hieroglyphs on one of the tombs we visited. This is a huge statue of Ramses that lays on its back. And the cartouches, these were where they put their names for all the kings and pharaohs. And then to go from the ancient, this was a mall. You wouldn't have never known. You could have been in Denver, in Alexandria. Then we went to Morocco, and we crossed the Atlas Mountains into the Sahara. These old kasbahs, these mud-walled cities, actually do melt when it rains. Timbuktu, 52 days by camel. And this is where we stayed. It was so hot in these tents, we actually ended up pulling all our mattresses out, and we just all slept outside. I had tea with this guy. He didn't speak a word of English, and I think I got real sick from it. And we all went on a camel ride. These were actually nice camels. The camels at the pyramids were really nasty and poorly taken care of. And this is back in Casablanca. They have this great big covered market called a souk. They have all of this stuff for sale there. Okay. that was the summer. Any questions before we go on? The lot is going pretty fast. Yes?
How long does it last, the semester?
2 months in the summer. In the spring, it's a full semester. So I was gone 4 months, from early January till late April. But the summer one, I think 60-some days. And we got back, I got back the Sunday before we started classes. So that was a little crazy.
Yeah, Mark, did you meet classes, regular classes, every day?
While we were at sea. Every day while we were at sea. When you get into a port, then everyone just scatters. I mean, there's a lot of organized trips, and then a lot of independent travel. What I saw was a lot of the students hadn't traveled very much before, so initially they would book these prearranged trips, and then once they got a little bit more comfortable and they found out that, you know, this was going to be okay, then they began to travel independently. Yeah. Yes?
How many students were there, and did they just take some special ed classes, or did they have like a whole semester worth of classes?
They had not a complete offering, but everything except chemistry, math, physics, you know, things that require a lab. There's no lab facilities on board the ship at all. So, but history, you know, a lot of music, psychology, geography, biology, so a lot of business majors and a lot of business classes.
And how many students were there?
About 600 to 700, depending on the voyage. Yeah, so a lot. Yes?
Do they still do the night before a port, and we used to call them essays?
Yeah.
Where they teach you a few phrases, like, how do I get to the ship?
Yeah, before you get to every port, there's a pre-port meeting, and so they give you information about the port, about things, kind of do's and don'ts in each port. You know, Europe, going around the Med is okay. As a biologist, it's a little bit too civilized for me. I mean, the human history was fascinating, but I was much more excited about the spring voyage when we went to a bunch of developing countries, which is kind of where I love to travel the most. But yes, very much so. And they'll have they give you what they call a green sheet, and in whatever the language of the country is, especially when we got to China and some of the countries where the language is very foreign, it would say, they would have the port where the ship was written, so you could just get into a taxi, and we did this. You would get lost in the city, wherever you were, and you give the green sheet to the taxi driver, and they'd say, oh, okay, and then they'd take you there. So it worked really well, even though, you know, I had no way of communicating with a lot of people, but that's just part of the fun.
Did they pay you, or did you have to pay?
Well, no, the faculty and staff do get paid. I think for a summer voyage, I can't remember, I think they paid about $6,000 and then a $1,000 travel allowance to get you to and from the ship. And then in the full semester voyages are, I think, $9,000 and then $1,500 to get you there and back.
So you don't pay any?
Will you pay, if you go on these prearranged trips, you pay. But if you lead them, then you go for free. Bless you. No, actually, you go for half price. So like the one in Egypt I led, that was a $400 trip. Then they put you up in the best, like 5-star hotels, no matter where you go. I'll show you one place where we stayed. So it just depends. I mean, it's not a money-making proposition, because by the time you're done and you've paid for all your visas and everything, I spent $700 on visas for the spring voyage, just for visas, because some of the countries, Ghana, China, $100 for a visa. And so, you know, we had to send our passports off months in advance. And then finally, the guy that mine wasn't ready, I just called him and I said, look, I don't really care. I just need my passport back. We'll work out the rest, which we did. Yes?
What about the costs on the student side?
I'll show you that at the end. I'll show you that. There is financial aid available, but I'll show you the costs and a list of the courses that are available. Yes?
What about libraries? I mean,
They have librarians, absolutely, yes. Very, very dear friends of mine from the voyages are librarians. So right now this program is hosted out of the University of Virginia, so your transfer credits are from the University of Virginia. And so they have, like the dean comes from UVA, And the chief librarian comes from UVA, but then they hire an assistant librarian, for example, and that person could be from anywhere. Yeah. And then they hire a whole group of, they call them, well, they're like RAs. What would be an RA here? And they have, you know, a certain section of the ship, their cabins, that's their C, and then they do a lot, they organize a lot of activities. Yes?
What about internet?
Internet is iffy on the ship. It's available, but they don't have the bandwidth that they need. And actually, I think that's by design, because one of the concerns is that students today, I'll make a broad generalization here, many of them are very tied into this social media, and so they'll sit in their cabins and just, you know, Skype with people or be on Facebook, and they don't really want that. They want the students out interacting with one another. And so I think the bandwidth limitation is not something they're really that interested in fixing, to be honest with you, because they want people out interacting, which, you know, you're forced to.
Did you find that on the ship, as you traveled, you almost formed your own society?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. By the time you're done, you're, you know, even though when you're getting off the ship, you'd think after 4 months you'd know everybody. There's all these people getting off. It's like, I've never seen that person before. Where have they been? You know, because it's not like you're going very far.
But we picked up phrases in different countries. And pretty soon we're talking in this mixture of expletives or whatever, and the foods.
I would never repeat any of those.
Yeah, I know. But
my students don't.
you know, we developed our own culture on board. And one thing was, we didn't have very much connection at all.
Yes.
And there were riots at Columbia. Martin Luther King was assassinated. That was our news.
Yeah. We actually, there's a shipboard television station, and when we were in the spring voyage, this whole Arab Spring, you know, the uprising in Egypt had started, and they actually got Al Jazeera, which is the Arab news CNN, basically, and we did have access to Al Jazeera, but other than that, it was just movies on a loop that we watched over and over. They just showed them over and over again. So that was our real only news. And you know, some of these students were very, very wealthy, and they had plans where they could call from anywhere in the world. But that was really a handful of students. Most of them were, you know, emailing, and then when we would get off the ship, you'd find an internet cafe, and then you could Skype or you could use Gmail to make a phone call from anywhere for free. So that's kind of how we stayed in touch. But it depended, even internet access in some of the countries was very marginal. Okay. So I'll show you, first of all, this is the map when we circumnavigated. We started in the Bahamas, then we went to Dominica in the Lesser Antilles, and then we sailed up the Amazon 1,000 miles to Manaus, which was really, as a biologist, just remarkable. Then we sailed across the equator to Ghana, then down to Cape Town, and then to a small island called Mauritius, a big tourist, actually for the Middle East, this is a big tourist destination. Went to India, then to Singapore. Wait a minute. Well, these dots are all screwy. So Singapore is here. We went to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City now. Then we went to Shanghai, and we were scheduled to go to Japan, make 2 stops, and then they had that earthquake and tsunami, and so we were rerouted to Taiwan. So Formosa, probably right there. And then to Hawaii, and then back to San Diego. Okay. I'm going to run this the same way. So this is the Bahamas when we were getting on board the ship. My younger son went with me as a student, and he took some of these pictures. This is one of the Lesser Antilles. This is Rousseau in Dominica. 300 and some odd rivers, great, real pretty island. We saw great seabirds. I'm a bird watcher, so we saw great seabirds while we were near Dominica. This was a trip I led into the rainforest there. This is a storm at the mouth of the Amazon. And this is traveling up the Amazon River. 2 days. The ship cruises 24 hours a day, about 20 knots. You see the erosion here when the forest has been cleared, and a lot of just very isolated home sites along the river. These are the kind of the river boats everyone gets around. And this was in a great fish market in Manaus. There's a lot, incredible species diversity in the Amazon of catfish. These are some kind of piranha relative. That's a piranha that we caught. And some of their fishing regulations. They're trying to regulate their fishing. This is the meeting of the rivers where the Rio Negro, what they call a Blackwater River, meets the upper stem, which is a Whitewater River. And this is how we traveled. On one of the Blackwater rivers. We're able to visit rainforests there as well. This is a flooded forest. See the water? And this, I have to stop. Yeah, ooh. This is a lodge we stayed in. It was about 5 hours from Manaus, so really way out in the Amazon. And the rivers are quite different than what we're used to. You know, we get increased flow during spring runoff. Here, during the wet season, the river fluctuates 30 to 60 feet and stays that way for 3 to 6 months. So this lodge, during the wet season, this tree is submerged. And the water comes right up to this bank right here. And then it stays there for anywhere between 3 and 6 months. So the guy who ran this lodge said, and the river we were on was just this incredible meandering river. He said what takes them 4 hours by boat in the dry season takes them 20 minutes by boat in the wet season, because they basically just go over all those trees or through them. So a very, very different rainforest than what I had expected. Very stunted, because this is a difficult environment for trees to live in. All kinds of crazy critters. This was their pet woolly monkey. The students actually let this thing sleep on their laps. This is a tapir, pet tapir. The trogon for the bird watchers amongst us. This is a houseboat on the river, on the Amazon. Now we've gone to Ghana. This is one of the slave forts. So this was a big part of African history, was to go visit these slave forts. Beautiful buildings, but really a kind of a haunted history. The beaches in Ghana were fantastic. I took a group to a national park with a canopy walkway. Here's the walkway. And this is 150 feet up. You can see how tall the trees were. The people in Ghana were just fantastic. They loved music. Everyone was singing. They were so friendly. Took another group to a place called Ankasa National Park right on the coast of Côte d'Ivoire. This is a clearing for rubber. These are rubber plantations. They're still raising natural latex. I don't know why. Here you can see the buckets. And then we spent a couple of days. I have to stop here. This was one of the highlights of the trip for me. Coming down this would be the western coast of Africa. We got into this Benguela current, which brings all this cold water up from Antarctica. And we hit a bunch of albatross that were absolutely astonishing. Here you can see them. They're difficult to see, but all those little white dots, those are all albatross. Hundreds of them feeding in this cold current. And so again, I actually canceled my ecology class this morning because I just couldn't stand to go inside. And we came out and we talked about seabird ecology that day because these things were all over the place.
So Tim,
Yes.
is the current bringing small animals that the fish feed on and the albatross feed on fish?
Bring nutrients up, cold water and nutrients. Yeah. So this was actually off the coast of Namibia where we hit this bunch. And you know, that's one of the great things about being on the ship is you just kind of take advantage of opportunities like that. This is Cape Town, South Africa, beautiful city. Table Mountain in the background, about 3,000 feet. And here I met up with a student of ours, former student, named John Manning. Some of you may remember John. His family has John has put a lot of weight on since you last saw him. He quit smoking, which is a good thing, but he's put on a lot of weight. And his family owns a very upscale lodge over near Kruger National Park. So we flew over and met John, and they hosted my son and I for 3 days. They were incredibly generous. And Africa was green. I'd never seen Africa green before. This is a baobab tree. We got to walk with John. That was the best part. We walked with a gun bearer and a tracker, and we found all kinds of cool stuff. This is a African clawed frog. I've never seen one in the wild before. It's a gray hornbill. This is a town called Simonstown down near the Cape. Beautiful place. And Simonstown is famous for its penguin colony. The only mainland colony in Africa. This is Mauritius. We spent just 1 day there. Then we went to India. This is in Delhi, the Arch of India. And this is India. Absolute chaos. The whole country is like this. There's just so many people, it's just a mob scene all the time. One of my students took this, he was in a pedal rickshaw. So this guy is pedaling them around. They don't show the cows and the other animals that are usually in the roads. India's changed a lot in the last 15 years. It's cleaned up a lot. The air quality is much better, but the traffic and the population has just grown. This is one of the places we stayed. And we visited a place called Ranthambore National Park, which I've been wanting to go to for about 35 years. It's an old hunting ground of one of the Rajas. This is the view inside the park. This is what it looks like outside the park. It's absolutely devastated. Langur monkeys, wild peacocks. This is a bird very much like our magpie. Spotted deer, Indian antelope, great big, almost the size of a cow. And this was the tiger. This is why we went. We actually saw a tiger, which I warned our students. We were only there for 2 days, and I said, we saw tracks the first day, and I said, you know, the chances of really actually seeing a tiger, Ranthambore is the best place to go see a tiger. Absolutely the most reliable place in India. But chances of actually seeing one are still pretty slim. One of my students had the camera, and I was just watching this cat. They are really spectacular in person. They're very camouflaged, and they're just stunning. This was a female. She was actually radio collared, and I don't know if they were tracking her. It's interesting, the way you know they're around, the antelope bark. They have this barking call. And the minute the drivers hear that, we were in an open vehicle, very much like in Africa. The minute they hear the animal, the deer, either deer or antelope barking, they'll say, oh, there's a tiger. They know immediately, and then they start looking for it. So we got to see this, actually not real well. You can see that's not the greatest picture, but it was one of those things that I have dreamed about seeing for many, many years. We went to the Taj Mahal, which is definitely worth a visit. This is where Gandhi is buried or was cremated. It's an old Mughal fort. These things are all over in Delhi. This is an old mosque that was really quite stunning, the stonework. Then we went to Vietnam. Notice the boats. They're almost sinking. They've got them loaded so much. They're just almost. This is a national park we went to, another rainforest. Look at the buttress roots on that tree. See the lizard? And the snake. I don't know what kind of snake. We didn't see many snakes. I'm always disappointed. Here's some communist propaganda. Don't cut the trees down. Don't burn them. And then the wildlife trader, the evil wildlife trader. I love their. Then we went to Hong Kong. Our ship is in the back. Then this is in Shanghai, the old city. The old city is fantastic. Old gardens, just beautiful architecture. And this is the new city. This is the river at night, and this is a town called Pudong across the river from Shanghai. China is frightening, I will tell you, after being there. I'm guessing that maybe not during my lifetime, but during your students' lifetime, they will rule the world. This was rice paddies 15 years ago. The building and it is just absolutely astonishing what they're doing in that country. And there's a lot of people there, and they are working hard. Then we went to Taiwan. I had visited Taiwan before, but it was neat to be back. Great people, really nice. This is up in the mountains in Taiwan, really pretty. And Yangmingshan National Park, very different from what we're used to, very manicured with poured concrete walkways. This is their little wildlife underpass, which I was fascinated by. They're ahead of us on that. Then we went to Hawaii. More albatross in Hawaii, 2 species there. This is the Laysan albatross. And more rainforest that we got to see there. This is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park on the Big Island. And this is costs for students. Okay. You'll see that the cheap, huh? These prices seem extraordinary to us, but interestingly enough, if you're going to one of these big Eastern, especially private university back east, this is actually the cost that you're paying per semester anyway. So you can see like any cruise ship, that ship is an old cruise ship. They bought it from a shipping line, a Greek shipping company that went out of business. And you can see that you pay for the cabin. You know, if you get an outside cabin with a bigger window, that costs you more. They do put the faculty up, I will say, in nice cabins. But not all of the staff get very nice cabins. The summer is actually a little more affordable. And still, I don't know if it's a bargain or not. I would not call it a bargain.
What's short term?
What's that?
What is short term?
Oh, there's a short-term Maymester voyage. They're going, the one they're doing this coming spring is for engineering. They're like a theme voyage. One of them is going to, I know they're going to be in Peru because they're going to go to Machu Picchu, and they'll go, basically it's the way they move the ship. So they'll stop in San Diego, and then they'll do a little Maymester and bring the ship around through the Panama Canal back over to the East Coast. And that's basically what they're doing, but they're trying to make the ship pay for itself while they're moving it. There is some financial aid available. Here's financial aid. You'll notice many of the places that have housed the program. Chapman, it started at Chapman many years ago. Then University of Colorado Boulder hosted it. The UC systems, and Hilo is a big partner. UVA is the current host. Pittsburgh hosted it for many years until 2005 when the ship got caught in a great big storm in the middle of the Pacific, and it got swamped. So imagine you're 40 feet on the 7th deck, you're 40 feet above the water, and a wave broke over the ship and broke all the windows out of the bridge, and it disabled the ship. So it must have been an awfully big wave. And of course, the lawyers at Pitt got to talking and thought, they must have thought, oh my gosh. You know, I mean, imagine the liability if you were to lose 600 or 700 college students. It would put the University of Pittsburgh out of business. So they said, we don't want to do this anymore, and then UVA picked it up. But you can see there are a couple of scholarships that do pay full tuition, and they, like every program, are interested in increasing diversity in their student body, so there may be some opportunities. For the faculty, these are spring 2012 course offerings. Can you read those, or should I make them bigger? You can read them. So you can see anthropology, art history. They do offer studio art classes, biology, a lot of marine biology, some chemistry. This is where they're offering some chemistry. So chemistry at sea, who knows what that is? Air pollution, biomedical, commerce, drama, economics, English lit, contemporary literature, writing, environmental science. You can see them. World music, a lot of psych, a lot of religion courses. Often, Spanish has been the only foreign language that I've seen offered on board the ship. If you're interested in this as a faculty or staff member, they're planning 3 years out all the time. So right now, they're hiring faculty for probably the 2013 voyage, maybe even further out. But I would say they're looking for people who have international experience, who have some demonstration that you're a good teacher. But you have to really like students, I will warn you. No, I'm serious. There were a lot of people from these big R1s, big research universities, who really weren't used to having as much contact with students as you have on board the ship. I mean, you are with them 24 hours a day, bless you. You eat with them, you recreate with them on board the ship, so you really have to enjoy teaching if you want to do one of these voyages. It's not a research voyage. There's no opportunity. I guess you could do psychological research on adapting to shipboard life, but it really is. And many of the faculty were really challenged by that. They had a hard time with that. They weren't used to the course loads. I taught, so in the summer you teach 2 courses, on the round the world voyages 3, and whatever 3 of your choice, or whatever your expertise is. So we were busy on board the ship. Yeah, Gene?
What were your class sizes?
Oh, 35 tops. Actually 32, I think, was the real limit. But if they had a lot of demand, like on the spring voyage, we had this guy along who was a really well-known travel writer. And of course, everyone wants to be a travel writer, so you can just travel and then write about it and earn a living that way. And so they ended up having to offer another section of travel writing, and they just had him do that. But generally, some of my classes were 12, I think was the smallest one. And the classrooms on board the ship are quite variable. Some of them are more conducive to teaching than others. In terms of, some of them have actual desks, others have little tables. Some of them are in the dining room. I mean, you could be almost anywhere. But all day long, every day on board the ship, there are classes. And you can sit in, as faculty and staff, you can sit in on any classes. Even older people, they have what they call lifelong learners. So they have these folks who many of them were retired. Many of them were retired faculty. And they go on these voyages, and they just sit in on all these classes, and they really contributed a lot to, just the classroom conversations. They've got a little bit more, experience than many of the students, and they were just a great addition to the voyage. Yes?
Are the classes structured based upon the faculty, or do they hire faculty for specific courses?
A little bit of both. Yeah, a little bit of both. There's one class called Global Studies that everyone has to take, and even faculty are expected to sit in. But other than that, it's very much up to the dean's discretion on who, well, in the summer it's easy to hire faculty, but spring and fall it's not, because you either have to have a sabbatical or you have to be retired. So they have a lot of retired faculty who are flexible. They can go for 4 months. Most of us can't do that. But interestingly enough, there were many staff and even some faculty who quit their jobs, believe it or not, to go on these voyages. One woman quit a tenure track position to go on this. Now, of course, you never quite know what really was going on. I only heard her side of it, but I'm like, you gotta be, everybody was like, what? You did what? You quit a tenure track position? So it was, people were looking for a change. There are people, they're nurses, and they hire MDs, and there are people who do this regularly, who just do it routinely. Like every 2 years or so, they'll go on one of these voyages. Yeah, Rob?
Tim, what kind of resources do they provide to you as a faculty member? It's like, here's your classroom, good luck. Or do they give you, access to technology? Do they give you any teaching materials?
You pretty much bring it.
You bring it.
You bring it. There are computers in the classrooms, and there's a library, and the librarians, some were very good. One lady got so mad at me for every time I'd come and ask her to do something, she'd look at me like, why can't you do this? So I actually contacted Mary, believe it or not, because I knew Mary would help me, like librarians are supposed to do. Yeah, so I just contacted Mary over the internet. But yeah, you pretty much you have to bring everything with you, because there's, you can make copies and do stuff like that, but you bring everything with you. Or you can try and use the internet, but it's brutally slow. It's like using dial-up, only worse.
So for students then, would they, as far as textbooks and supplies and stuff like that, how does that work out?
You can just buy them and they'll deliver them to the ship.
Oh, okay.
And you just show up and they're there. Just like the bookstore here will do for you, right, for a fee. Yeah. Or you can bring your own, but most students just had them delivered. Yeah. Yes, James?
Sam, with that many people on that ship, close quarters, did you have any experience of discipline issues or?
All kinds. Mostly,
how do they deal with them?
Mostly related around alcohol in the ports. The students, many of them would get off, and they had been cooped up on that ship for a while, and they hit it pretty hard, as you can imagine. That was the biggest single issue. Other than that, I was not involved. There's the academic dean, and then there's an executive dean who is in charge of that kind of stuff. And then the captain, of course, is in charge of everything, because if the captain, we had one student, the captain just said, you know what, I don't want that person on my ship anymore, and it's his ship. No, they didn't make him walk the plank. They just didn't allow him back on the ship in Taiwan. So there were students who were kicked off of the voyage. There were many, not many, there were a handful. They were disembarked. When you hit a port, their bags were packed and they were taken off the ship, and that was the end of their voyage. So we better quit. It's about time. So if you have any other questions, let me know. Okay, thanks.
Adams State College. Great stories begin here.